Hi, and welcome to The Growth Shift. Today's episode is about exploring the next chapter in staffing and what it really means to move beyond manual, outdated recruiting processes. I'm joined by Steve Lavner, founder and principal of Steve Lavner Executive Search and Talent Advisory. Steve, thanks so much for being here.
Great to be here, Jennifer. How are you?
Thanks. Yeah, I'm great, thanks. Before we, get into where the industry is going, I'd love to start with you. Steve, could you tell us a little bit about yourself and how did you originally get into executive recruiting?
I studied acting by trade, and at the time when I graduated, this is pre-LinkedIn, and as a day job, I didn't want to be a waiter or anything. I was temping, and one of the roles that I ended up running into my brother's friend, who was working at Heidrick and Struggles, a big search firm, big executive search firm, still is. And they were at the time, this is down on 40 Wall Street, they were at the time hiring actors, actually, mostly, to be what they called researchers, which was really name generators. Nowadays, you can sort of type into LinkedIn and find every communications person in St. Louis if you need to. But back then it was much more, they were guarded secrets, who reported to who. If we were trying to find fill a CTO at a financial services firm, we had to go into Merrill Lynch and find out who reported to Chris Corrado, the CTO at the time. In order to do that, you had to be bold and a liar, a bold-faced liar. And it was called rusing, and I would call in, and not proud of it now, maybe. I used to always say I wasn't hurting anyone. I was just trying to get them jobs. So I would find out who reported to whoever it was and run upstairs with that list and give it to the recruiter, who would then call those people and try to recruit them out. But it was a very slow process for that reason. So I actually, that's how I got started. That was really my first corporate job, other than some temp work I had done beforehand. Did some acting after that and left for a little, but then came back and started recruiting, and really have been doing that for 20 plus years. So grew up in that industry.
So what was it that, I guess, about executive recruiting that hooked you? Was it the people, the impact, the
Well,
thrill, the
everyone
complexity?
likes to know, everyone likes to feel like they know what they're talking about or feel that they're important. And I think that for me, being able to immediately be involved in conversations about something that's tangential, I could speak to someone at the time who was head of infrastructure for some trading software. I didn't know the details of it, but I got to really be in that world. And I love talking to smart people. That's the other thing. So I would be able to be involved in these super intense, intelligent conversations that were really, I had no right to be in the room at the time. I remember years later when I was recruiting, and I started at a company that was a media advisory company, and within the first 2 weeks, I was interviewing the former CMO of Gap, and I remember thinking, I'm in the room and having a good conversation, and I'm asking good questions, and this person and I were connecting on these things, and I had never been a marketer, so I think I just love the idea of, I love business. I love how it works. I love connecting people. I love people. I think the reason I went into acting actually was because I enjoyed people. I enjoyed, studying what people did. So I love those conversations.
So now that we know kind of where your journey began, let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture of what's happening across the industry right now. So from your seat in the market, what are the biggest changes you're seeing in executive recruiting today?
Yeah. I think that, the changes are, and obviously a lot of it's AI driven, and we have to be really cautious in making sure that this stays the high touch industry it's always been. I think the the thing that we can become very easily if we're not careful is transactional, throwing things against the wall, not doing really targeted searches. So, where the industry was heading, I found the industry was heading to a place that it was, all right, we need to fill this role in 2 weeks. We need to fill it in 3 weeks, because you have LinkedIn. It feels like anyone can do a search. Feels like anyone can look on LinkedIn and find the 10 people who do what they do. But the problem with that, and the way that I think AI can help in the end, is you're actually looking at a very small, really small slice of the people that can do the job. And we want to make sure that we're open enough to finding the person who, you know, comes from, as an old boss of mine used to say, right across the street. So the person doing the exact same job at a very similar company. But we also have to continue to make sure that we're looking at people who are maybe not exactly have that background, but have a very similar skill set that can be really that can really help. Help in making filling that role, but also expanding that role into something that helps the business grow. We need to be more strategic with the business. We need to work closer with the business. And for about 10 years, it feels like, because of speed, wanting to do things very quickly, we've been actually working for the business. And that is, the distinction there is you need a third eye. Going back to acting a little, when I was a director a little bit, you're watching people act. They're great, they're talented, but even Robert De Niro needs a director. Even a CEO needs someone to look at the situation and help them. So I think where the industry is moving, hopefully, is becoming a bit more strategic. And AI can help in that. AI becomes an assistant. AI becomes something that you can utilize as a tool to make sure that you have the time to be more strategic.
Sure, absolutely. Especially since you said you started out in like the most manual of ways, kind of
Yeah.
as the um what was the word you called it? I call it a secret shopper. You call it
Yeah.
a
It was rusing. It was
rusing,
rusing.
right? Right, rusing. Right. I mean, it doesn't get more manual than that,
No, no,
right?
it doesn't, and it was, I mean, I love the fact that I started out in that, because I understand how I'm so
Yeah,
grateful for LinkedIn. The names are still it still should in my mind, it's still hard to find those names. It's still like an amazing thing when I have all these great people to call. So when I call someone, it's an important call.
sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, what would you say are the kind of the expectations of how your client, the person who, I mean, I guess you have two kinds of clients, right? You have the person who needs a job and then the person who needs to hire for the job. How have the expectations between those two subsets of clients
Right. So
changed?
my background um is all executive search until the last 6 or so years, and so I'll explain why I think it. So executive search, the client is the company, right? And we're there to serve that company. And at some point, we used to always say that we're sort of ushering in 5 or 6 candidates. At some point, it becomes a matchmaker, and you push back on your client, you push back on the candidate. You're sort of weaving in and out to make sure that they find the fit. When I went in house for the last 5 or so years, 6 or so years, there was certainly the instinct is to make it more about your internal client, and that, hey, in this case, it was Edelman. We're Edelman. Everyone wants to work for us. We're in PR. That's sort of a big space. That's, one of the big companies. However, the key is to stay sort of you know, as Switzerland between those two, and make sure that you're able to sort of direct traffic in a very high touch, in a very empathetic way for both sides, and be that person that can be helpful to each side. I mean, I think the expectation from my client, who is the company, is that I'm going to show them, they want you to boil the ocean and show them everything, right? The truth is, I've always said that recruiting's not about filling the role, but it's really about making the client feel comfortable in making a hire. There are many directions you can go with a hire, and I'm pretty convinced those unicorns all exist for every role. If you take your time, if you find them, is it worth spending 8 months to find a unicorn when you can have someone in the role who can bring something you didn't even expect in 2 months? I don't think so. So, the expectation from the client is that I'm gonna um, guide them through this and make sure that we find the right person in the right time. And there's a sort of a line there that you want to find it soon enough so that it still makes sense for what they initially look for. And my promise to the candidate is, I'm not going to lead you into, a shitstorm. And I'll be open with you about what I think. Being open to both sides is sort of the key. I think I'm saying that like 9 different ways, but it is, you don't want to lead someone into a role that they're not eyes wide open to about, what the client could be, what the job could be.
So we have the candidates, we have the clients. You're talking about the speed and identifying
Yeah.
skill sets and strategy. We talked about manual processes and then kind of the role of AI. Like, where do you see AI being effective or using it yourself?
Yeah. Well, I think it as of today has a ceiling. The maybe we don't quite understand what the ceiling is, what it will be able to do. But as of today, it's not a decision maker. We're still the decision makers. And I always say that I have like 4 or 5 assistants helping me with AI. But I think the role of AI in the end could potentially be a big one. I just think that we have blind spots. Recruiters have blind spots. Hiring managers have blind spots. Everyone has a blind spot. AI is not going to be any different. I mean, what you put into it, it will potentially have blind spots as well. So the key is to approach it, I think, as just a coworker, as opposed to the thing you rely on for everything.
Sure.
I love it because, for me, it sort of speeds up the manual things that I used to have to do, right? So I can type a draft of a assessment and sort of run it through AI and make sure that it makes sense. And it's my writing. It still feels it doesn't. I'm not comfortable just sending it a resume and say write an assessment, but I know people that have done that. So I think it is yet to be determined. Look, we're outsourcing our thinking a little bit using it if we're not careful. And that's not good. It just can't be good. But as of today, speeding something up without risking quality is what it's doing.
Sure. Yeah. What about helping you find clients or candidates?
I have not used it in that way. I think for me, what I love about recruiting is being able to look at the world and see, sort of creatively, where are these people? I know that there are some ATSs that it certainly helps to weed out candidates and get it down to, 200 people to 8. I'm sure that would be helpful, but I would still look at the other candidates. I don't, when I've filled roles in the past, most of the roles are filled by referrals. So it's not the person. So I'll call someone or reach out to someone who's not right. And I know they're not right, but I'm reaching out to them to see if they know of anyone because they're in some space that would make sense that it might. That's always the way I find the candidates. I don't know. It's just not working the way I've always worked. I'm very happy. I'm very open to AI speeding things up and making it more quality. I don't want to sound like old man Lavner. I will change. I will. I just haven't seen it be the helpful thing that it could be, other than speeding up sort of some tasks.
Sure. It sounds like you're really looking for that authenticity in clients and reading beyond what a robot really can
Right, but
spit out with some keywords.
we've all dealt with terrible recruiters. People have been spitting out terrible keyword assessments long before AI.
Right.
I think that the thing that I bring to it, or that other good recruiters bring to it, I'd like to say I'm a good recruiter, I think. What what they bring to it is listening to the client, listening to the marketplace, and being and not being afraid to push back. So I don't
Sure.
know. I don't know.
Take it all with
You
a
can't
grain of
just
salt.
right.
Yeah.
I'm fine with tech. I love technology. I don't think AI is the end of the world. I don't think we're headed into, you know, some um some terrible dust movie, where we're all fighting each other and eating faces off. Although my
Sure.
kids would love that movie.
We could probably create that with a few prompts on AI.
Great movie. I do. You know what? That's what I really do on AI. I make bedtime stories for my kids.
Yeah, no, that's super fun.
It's the best. Like, one of them's really into K-pop Demon Hunters, and, like, every night it's a different adventure with him and Rumi, and I know all these things because I
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
children's.
fun. All right. Well, besides bedtime stories with AI and AI to the side, what's been working really well for you lately as an executive recruiter, whether it's how you engage with candidates, how you work with clients?
I
Like
love
what's
going out and not being worried about a fee. I love going out and talking to people about the market. I just love it. Now, maybe I'm lucky that I can do that right now. And when my wife kicks me out and my mortgage comes up and and I'm living on the street, possibly I'll need to be a little bit more proactive. But right now, I just love being able to talk to someone, see what they're looking for. So far it's worked out. So far, someone came to me just yesterday with a search that I never would have thought that, I'd be working on. But it's an exciting one because I've had those conversations. People forget that um, it's making sure you don't burn bridges. It's making sure you're helpful. I want to be helpful. I love being helpful. It's the same thing that made me want to be a recruiter years ago is, I studied acting. I want to feel smart. I don't want to be an actor. And so be in the room with these people and hear what they're looking for. That's been the thing that has sort of, both from a business standpoint and from a personal creative standpoint, been the most exciting thing for me.
sure.
This is what you're
Okay.
doing, right?
Yeah.
On a podcast. I mean, it's exciting to hear what people are thinking. That I love documentaries, even if it's about something I hate.
Right.
Interesting to hear how people think.
Yeah. So that client that came to you yesterday,
Yes.
how did they find you?
I worked with someone they knew years ago and they reached out. I had had a conversation with them probably 6 months ago saying, hey, if you ever need anything, let me know. And it was really more at the time. I was newly starting, this particular venture. So there were no details about what I could do, but they knew who I was and they knew that I recruited and they knew so I think it was following up and they came to me and said, hey, we have something for you. And that was it.
It's awesome. Do you have a market that you
Yeah,
focus on?
communication,
Communications.
financial communications, marketing, investor relations. But every recruiter is a generalist, really. I could do, a lot of things. I mean, I started out, if I go through all the things I did, I worked for hedge funds and fund to fund, placing people. I worked for heads of infrastructure, heads of technology and financial services, supply chain, engineering. I've done some roles in China for some manufacturing engineering roles, programmatic advertising, marketing, operations, a couple CEO roles. It's been everything. The last 10 years have been communications and marketing.
So it sounds like lots of successes, but we know it's not all smooth sailing.
You know,
What have been some of the biggest challenges you faced recently, especially as the industry moves away from more manual processes?
yeah. It's a good question because they're like everyone thinks they can do search. That's the number one thing, that making sure people understand the merit of paying for retained executive search and the advantage to that. That is a constant. I mean, but that's been constant for 30 years. People don't always understand why it's needed until they need it, until they've run through every other situation. So that's a challenge. It's a consistent challenge to say you're going to pay me whatever the percentage is of the person that you're placing. So that's a challenge. I think it's also challenging to go out on your own I'm all intents and purposes, it's an entrepreneurial startup, and that's intensely terrifying at points and, not something I necessarily had thought I would be doing now. But the industry changed and in-house gigs are tough and I'm not sure I'd want to go back into the big executive search world. So I think these challenges are just, both the expectation that things can move really quickly. And I think AI is going to make those expectations go up. And, the challenge of just getting out there and doing it every day.
So how do you personally navigate some of that?
Uh, well, I make sure that I'm helping people, that every phone call I have with someone is helpful to them so that I'm someone they want to talk to. And it's a philosophy though. It's not, talk to me in 5 years. I navigate it now by saying, I don't want to be the person throwing resumes at everyone and saying, ooh, this guy's great. He does all these. I know you don't need those things, but maybe, and I don't want to, I don't want to run my business by scaring people into thinking they need something that they don't. I don't want to run my business by pushing people on a business that they don't need. I'd like to be helpful in any way I can. So it's philosophical in that we'll see if it works out that way. It's an idealistic way of going about it. I'm not silly enough to think that I can just, coast along without ever being salesy, but I would like to.
Sure. Well, that really sets the stage for what's ahead. Where do you want to be, or what do you think about for the next 6 to 12 months? What are you most focused on?
Doing really good work, just doing really great search work, making placements that last for 5 years and more, building relationships, continuing to bridge relationships, understanding the industries I work in, being someone who is someone that people can come to even if they're not looking for a search. Boy, it sounds idealistic. Sounds silly. That's really what, if you come to me in 12 months and I'm successful, I will be successful with those things. Will I have 14 searches this year? I don't know. We'll see. But I will definitely become someone that you can rely on and not ghost people and not do the things recruiters often do. Although I've done those things in the past, I'm sure. Not right.
Okay, so much great information here today. To kind of wrap things up, what is a piece of advice you'd give to someone starting out in the executive recruiting industry today?
Don't burn bridges.
Excuse me.
Really don't burn bridges. Remember that any piece of research is research. Even any information you can give to your client is research, is helpful. So when you go out and you have these conversations, pay attention to everything. Try to understand that these are humans and you know, not just a CMO. Even a CMO has a family and is concerned about what the job's going to be like the day to day. I think there's often the sort of, well, this is an executive and they can take it from here, and I'll get them introduced to the right people, but ask the right questions, but really don't burn bridges, because today that intern that you're dealing with who's a pain in the ass will be a CMO one day, and they will remember you if you treat them like garbage. And I'd say that to the intern too. Remember that recruiters are doing a job also. Treat people well.
Steve, that's such a great note to end on. For listeners who want to connect with you or learn more, where's the best place to find you online?
You can go to you can look me up on LinkedIn, Steve Lavner, SteveLavner, or Steve Lavner Talent.
Okay.
Reach out to me. Happy to talk. And happy to coach, whatever is needed.
Fantastic. Thanks so much for sharing your experience and perspective. This has been great. And thanks to everyone listening. We'll see you next time.
Thank you.